Is Zach Bolduc a top 6 forward? We'll talk about it here on Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And a happy Wednesday, September 25th. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, I will be talking to you about Zachary Bolduc and how he is impressing, but is he a top 6 forward? The biggest question at training camp? Well, it's the biggest question out of blank because it's not just training camp, but it's also the question that might determine how fans feel about this season. And do not panic in preseason games. Little PSA, and I will answer your questions that you did leave on my last video. I did a collab with Locked On Wild yesterday, but that video is having a really difficult time uploading. However, you can listen to the audio version on wherever you get your podcasts, and it's also on the Locked On Wild YouTube page. I do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. As I said, I hope you guys are having a good Wednesday today. I know the Blues are playing the Columbus Blue Jackets. And while I do understand preseason games, and I'll dive into this a little bit later, I think what's most important is practice at the moment. While it is good for the players to get acquainted with the ice again and for them to feel comfortable again, I believe that working on different skill sets in practice, different drills, skating drills, whatever you need to do, can be more beneficial. 2-on-2s, just a whole bunch of things, the power play, the penalty kill, all of that. So do not get mad at me if I'm not doing my normal regular season kind of schedule of doing a pregame show, because I really want to focus on some key elements of some players on the Blues. One of them is Zach Bolduc. So here's the thing. He is impressing many. And I can say when I did watch him the other night, I felt good about him. I felt very confident about how he played. And I think that's a really important thing when it does come to Zachary Bolduc, is that he did play on the top line. It was Bolduc, Bush, and Neighbors. And I did think that was actually a really good line, and I liked it, okay? Here's the thing. When you think about the season ahead, you probably know that Bush is going to be on the second line center. I think you already have Robert Thomas kind of securing that he will be the first line center, which is, again, valid. He has earned that position. I mean, I wouldn't put Robert Thomas anywhere else because I'm biased. But again, that second line left wing position then is like, okay, well, who gets it? Now, I personally think that maybe Dylan Holloway will have it. However, what I do want to say on that one is that Captain Braden Shen will not be playing center most likely this season. So then you have him in question. There's just a lot of question marks regarding the wing positions. What I like a lot about Zach Bolduc is that he does make himself known in the games. And I think that's very important. At practice, he makes himself well known. And I think he has been putting in the work. You know, last year I watched him with the Thunderbirds. He gets called up to the Blues and really is impressive. I was able to speak to Zach Bolduc after he scored his first NHL goal, which was on his 21st birthday, which was super cool. Blues lost, by the way. I just want to put that out there. But the Blues did lose that game. However, he ended up making a lot of his time coming up here and playing for the Blues towards the end of the season. With Doug Armstrong prior to training camp expressing he could see him being a top 6 forward, it's made me look at him a little bit differently in the camps and in the games. I think over time he has that potential. However, what I will say is this: it all depends on how the lines and how they all work together, which is why it's important to try things out now so you get it right for the regular season. If you said to me at the beginning of training camp, Hale, you're going to see how Zach Bolduc could fit in as a top 6 forward, I would call you crazy, to be honest. I would say, I don't see where, you're coming from. And that's just me being honest. However, after watching him at camp, in the games, I can see how you might be able to think that. But do I think he's going to get that? Not now. However, I can see the justification on him being a potential top 6 forward. But I mean, he just wants to be on this team, right? So that's the most important thing. Coach Bannister spoke today, and he talked a lot about Zach Bolduc. He said overall that he's been happy with his performance at camp. He liked how he was at development camp, and then he also liked how he played in the rookie tournament. He would like to see a little bit more on the side from him. Last year, they were able to obviously see what he does with the T-Birds. And then when he got brought up here, they were able to see what he does in the NHL kind of level. And that's one thing that Bannister was really complimentary to him about, was that he's able to shoot the puck. And he wants to see more of that. He sees that he is attempting to, let's go say, to shoot the puck more, but he just wants to see Bolduc kind of take that stride forward. He asked that of him going forward, and he said that's the one thing that I want to see from him is just shoot the puck more. He's got a lot more to give, and Coach Bannister was very stern on that they haven't seen all of his potential yet, right? But he did say that he is a more confident player. You know, he's a year older, and his physicality is more engaged, and there is more for him to give to kind of be around the puck. So when you have your head coach of the team saying, hey, you know, I want to see you take more shots. I want to see you, you know, just be more engaged. That's a sign that they see potential in him. I don't think necessarily that they would waste any of their time, you know, talking about him the way that they are and, you know, really coaching him and training him the way that they are if they don't see that potential. Now, do I think he's going to make the team out of camp? I do. I really do. I think that he's had a good camp. However, do I still think he's going to be in that top 6? I don't know. Now, if you said top 9, absolutely, you can justify it. It just, the thing is, the Blues made a lot of moves this offseason, as you know. And obviously, they brought in more offensive players, and there's only so many spots that you can give. So it's not a negative if he isn't a top 6. I think that one of the things that the Blues needed to improve on the most was their third and fourth line. I mean, I know Kevin Hayes was our third line center last year, and I always send my condolences to Kevin Hayes because I honestly cannot imagine what he has gone through. Um, but he just didn't fit well here in St. Louis, which, you know, it happens. Gets an opportunity with the Penguins and wish him nothing but the best. But then that kind of changes a lot of things up. It allows, you know what it allows, honestly? It allows more opportunity for these younger players. And I think for a Zachary Bolduc, if you do have him on the third line, um, it just gives more opportunities. I don't want to say that the Blues are an old team. They have older players, but I wouldn't call them an old team. I think they're actually a younger team. I think there is a lot of young players that do make up this roster, but I do think it's important that they still maintain their veteran players because it allows for growth. And when I look at a player like a Zachary Bolduc, you might say, Hale, who is somebody that he might, you know, kind of learn from? I think Captain Braden Shen is a great example. I think that Braden Shen has a lot of qualities about how he plays, a little bit different than the style that Bolduc plays. But I'm talking about in terms of just different things. Like, I watched Braden Shen back in the day before he was even on the Blues, and he really wouldn't shoot the puck as much. Like, there wasn't as much confidence within him. Now you see a very confident Braden Shen. And I think that Zach Bolduc would really benefit from just playing with him in some capacity. So I would like that a lot. However, I liked how he looked with Boosh. I did. I thought they looked good. The thing is with the Blues is that a lot of their veteran players are good mentors. I don't know if I would call Jordan Kyrou a veteran player. Maybe I would. I would call Ruzi a veteran player. I'm just saying overall, they all are just very good mentors, and you can all learn something from them. I know Jordan Kyrou hasn't been talked about here a lot. And I just want to add in, I know that this is about Zach, but I just want to add in that he has been having a good camp. And, you know, that's a positive too. Sometimes when you don't have a lot to say about a player, it also means that they're doing well. Kind of like Robert Thomas, right? We all know that Robert Thomas is going to perform the way that Robert Thomas does, which is why the bio that's yet to change, Robert Thomas season, it is because we know that he is going to make it happen. So I feel very good about Zach Bolduc and his potential on the Blues. However, I just don't know if I see him on the top 6 forward position. Not a negative. I just think that's one of those things that's, going to take time. And you never know. Lines do change. So even if he doesn't start in the top 6, you never know what can happen. That's the beauty of hockey. A lot can happen. There's also a beauty in FanDuel. That is right. Hey, NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And here's the thing. I love my FanDuel and I love my football. I think football is one of the best sports to watch. Bring back the Rams. Tomorrow you do have the Cowboys and Giants, two teams that I absolutely hate. And I will make that well known. So if you don't want to do a money line and you somehow say, maybe Dak will throw an interception, typical Dak. I'm not throwing shade. I'm just saying the truth. You can bet on that during the game. It is so much fun. FanDuel has all that you need to do. So make sure to head to FanDuel.com and use code LOCKEDONNHL. So one of the biggest questions that, people have coming out of the training camp or people have when it comes to how will the season be is all on one player, and it's on Dvorsky. And you might be wondering the biggest question out of blank, because this question could be the biggest question out of camp. It could be the biggest question out of how the season will end up, because there are so many what ifs to this. Obviously, Dvorsky wants to make the team. We talked about what he said before, that he is willing to do whatever it takes to make the St. Louis Blues team. I love the ambition. I love the enthusiasm, and I love the confidence. I respect it, actually. I don't love it. I respect it, because that's how you should be if you want to be wearing the blue note. You should want to earn your spot on this team. However, and here's the thing. Did he have the best game? No. But there were things that I liked, and I think things that he can grow on. I think the problem is this. Is that, let's go say maybe the first couple months, he doesn't, and let's just say he's with the Thunderbirds. Like, we're going to actually, I have to repaint the scenario. First couple months, he's not on the Blues. He's with the T-Birds, and he is just playing fantastic, right? Dominating, and they call him up. That could be a more of a realistic scenario than him making the opening night roster. What I will say is this: cuts happen. 8 players were sent out or sent back to their juniors team. I think that right now there's a big question surrounding him, because there is a lot of pressure when it comes to what will happen with him. Personally, I want him to make the team, and I want him to be on that opening night roster. I do. I'm selfish. I do. That's the fan side of me. The non-fan side of me, the more media-based me, says, I think I can understand if they, send him to the Thunderbirds. He gets that kind of development play. And, oh no, we have some breaking news, actually. I am so sorry. So this happened right now. So defenseman Scott Harrington has an upper body injury and will not return to tonight's game. Yes, I'm recording this during the intermission of the Blues and Blue Jackets game. But so that was some news. Anyways, back on Dvorsky. But I think if he starts with the Thunderbirds, that's going to give him more opportunity to develop. And I think playing the AHL, and I've said this before, it isn't a bad thing. I think it's actually a very good league. It's got a more competitive. I mean, I've been to a ton of Thunderbirds games, and I can tell you that, it is competitive down in the AHL. I think people, obviously, when you think about the AHL, it's not the NHL, right? It's not that same type of pressure. But when you are trying to get the Calder Cup, I mean, I'm just saying, like, it is kind of intense. But That's a more realistic approach. Do I think this season is doom and gloom if Dvorsky doesn't start on the Blues? No. However, I would like for them to take a chance on him. I am a bit selfish because you saw how I was at the draft last year when I was doing my reaction video when I was reacting to our 10th overall draft pick, and how I was freaking out because I was like, this guy is so talented. And I did, all my videos on the prospects. So obviously I kind of had a feel for how he was going to be. So when we did get him, I was quite excited. Well, today after morning skate, Coach Bannister did talk on Dvorsky. For his first game, he played well. It's a feeling out process. When he has the puck on the stick, he's really good. He likes to slow the game down a bit, and that's what he likes to do. That is his game and style. When he doesn't have the puck, he needs to kind of get where his line mates need support, and that's something that he needs to work on. Defense, another thing that Coach Bannister wanted him to work on, but he did reiterate how smart of a guy Dvorsky is when he is on the ice. And I think what Bannister said too at the end, kind of after he was, telling, media what he liked and didn't like, he said, you want to see players continue to improve, whether it's in practice or habits. That's what makes you an everyday NHL player. It's the way they compete, skate, and execute. And that's what they look for in Dvorsky. So I think that's another indicator too. You have the head coach of the team telling you what makes you an everyday NHL player. Okay, your first game, you didn't have the best game. But, however, he did say things that he liked and didn't like. And if he is able to adjust and to take, the criticism, right? You need to get to where your line mates are to support them. You need to do that in the next game. And then if you do that, you never know. I mean, I think that hockey is a sport where you have to just be smart. It's a quick and fast sport. And when Dvorsky does have the puck, he does slow the game down, but he does it in a beautiful type of way. It's not a way where it ruins the pace. It's a way where it's like, okay, we can take a breath. He knows what he's doing. He has great stick handling and puck handling. It's such a great skill, his stick handling skills. But he needs to just be a little bit sharper with getting to where his line mates are. Again, first time playing in a preseason game. He's still like 18, 19. He's 19, young. And I think Bannister acknowledges that. I know Doug Armstrong acknowledges that when he did speak about Dvorsky heading into training camp. I just think that there is a lot of pressure on him to make this team, and that's not fair on him. I mean, I know that he wants to be on it, but if he does get sent down to the AHL, I don't want him to take that as a fail, right? Because he didn't fail. It's a positive because it means that he has the opportunity to get called up during the season. And I think that's a very important thing. I mean, the St. Louis Blues, if I'm being blunt, they're in a position where they really do need to get back to the playoffs. I was talking about this on the crossover with Locked On Wild. It's been 2 consecutive seasons. They brought in more talent than they had last season. They really should make it. I mean, they were the best worst team last season. So, am I worried if they don't make it, things will go downhill? Absolutely. And I don't even want to think about that. I know throughout the season we're going to probably talk about that when they go on a couple game losing streaks because it is inevitable. The Blues are going to lose some games here and there, and that's just. But I do think having that realistic approach to how they're going to take on the season, it's a good thing. It just sets the tone, and that is what's most important for a kid like a kid. I've had to pause this because every 5 seconds I keep on sneezing, so that's fun. But I hope that kind of, answers the questions that we all have when it surrounds Dvorsky and what the Blues are trying to do, because I can see both sides to where you want to have him on the team opening night. Fan side of me says yes. But then I can also see, media type of side where it's like, okay, I can understand having him start with the Thunderbirds, but I mean, I'm biased and I'm just going to be upfront about that. I'm biased when it comes to Dvorsky. What I'm not biased about is my love for Indeed. If you need a hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work, use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster, 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One thing I love about Indeed is that it is leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day. Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of the show will receive a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/locked on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Blues. You need to hire. You need Indeed. Indeed, you do. Do not panic when it comes to preseason wins and losses. I know we're down 2-0 right now to the Blue Jackets. I know we have yet to win a preseason game. However, we were undefeated in the rookie games, so that's a positive. But at the end of the day, I know it can be a little bit frustrating, and I know that it can be a little bit of, oh, well, this isn't good. Do not panic. This is about looking at individual players, and a part of me is kind of, I guess you can say, happy that we don't really necessarily have to worry about, and we don't have to worry about our players potentially getting injured despite how physical Tyler Tucker was. I just think that if you're going to play, full out in preseason, that's also a mistake. I don't know. I have a really weird way of approaching it, but that's just my personal take. And I'm just so sick of people being like, oh, this team's going to suck. It's preseason hockey. It is preseason hockey. It is not the regular season yet. So do not do this. Do not make yourself crazy when you watch the games and think, oh no, we're done. I promise you're not done. Like, you're gonna be okay. So I've had a couple questions. And one of them was like, Hale, name some players that might make the bottom six. And I'm just gonna do probably the players that are gonna rotate in and out of the bottom six. So on the third line center, I do have Alex Texier. I do have him being the third line center. I think that's what's going to happen. Now, it's interesting, right? Because I still need to see more of these players. I mean, you could maybe go with a Brandon Saad on the left wing, right? Maybe you would even have him on the fourth line. Maybe you would have, a Kapanen somewhere thrown in there. You would have maybe a Alexei Torpachenko in there. Um, it's so difficult, right? Oscar Sundquist, maybe fourth line center. But then you think, where do you put Jordan Kyrou? And then it's like, oh no. And then you might have to then have Sonny not. There's such a mess right now. Because I feel like the top six, I can kind of like solidify it. But at the same time, like with Ruzi, I do like him playing center, obviously. So maybe you would have him as the third line center. It, it's a whole mess right now because I genuinely don't know. And then Nathan Walker, love Walker, but it's like, does he even, fit into the lineup? I don't know. I think some of these players, you're going to see them go up and down, but I feel like the deeper we get into camp, we're going to see some more NHL type of lines for the bottom six. It's a good question. There's just a lot of moving pieces, right? Because I do think Dylan Holloway will get to be a top six. Okay, so somebody says 9 days until the season starts. I'm so happy hockey is coming, especially with how the Cardinals blew it again this year. Yeah, I think it's a little bit more than 9 days, but yeah. Yeah, the Cardinals season, and obviously JD that does Locked On Cardinals has a lot better information. Yeah, it was disappointing when you thought we were gonna be going to the playoffs. the postseason, but that did not happen. So not good. So somebody said, I'm really high on Broberg and Holloway. Is there comparable players that are similar to as far as what to expect? So that's a really good question, actually. So thank you for asking that question. So when you think about other players, maybe, especially players that, Holloway plays center, and again, you can also move Holloway around to a wing position, right? I even mentioned Foxa. Like, this is what I'm saying. This whole team, like, there's too much competitiveness this season. Um, is there another player like Holloway? I would actually compare him to kind of maybe like a Jordan Kyrou. Now, I know that they're completely two different players, but I feel like Kyrou doesn't get looked at as much. Again, I understand why maybe people don't like him. I don't know. But I do think that Kyrou, he does have speed on the ice. He needs to be a little bit in more control, but he does take those shots and he does add an element to the game as in physicality. So I would say that. Now, when you look at defense, right, and you talk about Philip Broberg, okay, who else on the defense would you compare him to? Well, it's hard, right? Because my first reaction would be maybe a Matthew Kessel. But again, as much as I love Matthew Kessel, I don't fully know his game yet because we haven't seen that much from him in the NHL type of level. So Philip Broberg's kind of like his own self, right? It's hard to figure out a Blues player because Perunovic kind of mimics some of Torrey Krug. Um, Parayko's on his whole other level, so maybe I would compare Parayko to Broberg. Maybe if Broberg was a little bit more experienced, because Parayko just has that control. I feel like Broberg, the one thing about him when he goes on defense and watching some clips of him in Edmonton is just his sustainability to sustain a play and just to be able to really follow through with it. He does a good job. I just think that he could improve on that, and Colton Parayko does a great job doing so. So that's what I would say. So another good question. I love doing these little Q&As with you. Josh says that he likes the interviews. So thank you. Thank you. So that was some of your questions that I selected today. I love when you ask me questions about this season. But honestly, when it comes to the bottom six, like I don't have my bottom six lines. I am going to do an episode this week, however, where I'm going to do my mock lines and pairings for the season because I do have a lot to discuss when it comes to it. I might take my whiteboard. I do have a whiteboard. I think the hockey guy on the YouTube, his YouTube page. He does a lot of videos with whiteboards. I'm going to have my whiteboard. I'm going to be writing out different line combos because I cannot for the life of me figure out this bottom six because sometimes I'm like, oh, I like it. And then sometimes I'm like, I don't because there is so many guys fighting for roster spots that I think could make it that probably won't, or vice versa. So a lot to discuss, but I love these episodes and I love talking to you guys. You're the absolute best. I feel like the show, now that we have some of that media from the Blues, PR, it just adds another element, right? So thank you again, and I will talk to you next time here on Locked On Blues. And you didn't think I forgot, did you? Like always, let's go Blues.